Hi, I'm Dr. Darin Detwiler, and I'm here with Amy Philpott. Amy, thank you for joining us. What are we going to be talking about this section?
Hi, Darin. In this section, I'm going to be talking about regulatory expectations of a recalling firm. Regulatory expectations. Well, the first thing is you have to comply with the FD&C Act, the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, which we've already gone through. The enforcement policy is under subchapter 7 if you want to refer to it. And it essentially says that there are certain guidelines that manufacturers and distributors have to follow, and it outlines these guidelines. And this is specifically with respect to a voluntary recall or removal of a product. During a recall, right, what they do depends on the classification and circumstances. There are minor differences between FDA and USDA that I'll go over. And of course, you have to have a recall plan. And if the recalling company falls under FDA's purview and has to abide by the preventive controls rule under FSMA, then by law, you have to have a recall plan. I highly recommend it for any food company, however. So here's a comparison between FDA expectations for recalls. And this goes back to our class 1, 2, and 3. And while I'm focusing on FDA, this is very similar to USDA with a couple of differences that I will note. So class 1, 2, and 3, remember in our description, class 1, you always have to have a public notification. Class 2, maybe, and class 3, no. The difference between FDA and USDA here is that if you are an FDA regulated company, or if the product, I should say, is regulated by FDA, then the firm issues the public notice. The recalling firm is responsible for putting out a press release and responsible for making sure it is in fact picked up by the news and reported. If you are governed by USDA, and I keep referring to the company, but actually it's dependent on the product. If the product is governed by USDA, USDA will write the press release. And they will send the recalling firm a copy of the press release 20 to 30 minutes before it's posted. You will not have an opportunity to change anything except for errors. If the company name is spelled wrong, if they've accidentally inserted the wrong description of the product, then you can change it. But other than that, no changes. If the product's governed by FDA, remember the firm writes it, although FDA does request to review it. And if they see something that they feel diminishes the nature of the hazard and threat to public health, then they will request and strongly urge a company to change it. Immediate notification of the agency in all cases across the board. Product removal level. In class 1 and 2, you have to go to the consumer level. In class 3, you typically the wholesale or retail level. You don't have to go to a consumer level. Sorry, that was the notification part. For the product removal, it's the same for class 1 and 2, user and consumer. And then you don't have to remove the product for class 3. So of course that's blank there. Those sub-distribution, those sub-recall notices, class 1 and 2, that is necessary. In a class 1, you have to go back to everyone you sent your recall notice to in terms of your customers, your buyers, your direct buyers. And for 100% of them, you have to receive an answer from them saying they received your notice and telling you what they did with any product that they had in inventory. And if they further distributed it, then they need to tell you that they notified their buyers, their customers.
Well, and I think
And
that
that is
this is a point there where when we look at those the leafy greens issues of the late 20 teens, uh, remember the FDA, they went to retailers and they couldn't determine where the lettuce came from. And they went to some of the farms and they couldn't even tell you where it went to. And so not only is this idea of sub distribution notification is important, but the idea of that transparency in terms of who is involved in this, who needs to be contacted for this sub distribution notification.
Yes, exactly. And it used to be that wherever the recall started in the supply chain, you'd kind of hop one step at a time till you got to the consumer. And it took a lot longer to get to the consumer. There are several factors that have contributed to it, but today we're taking fewer hops to the consumer. We get there faster. Consolidation of the industry, unfortunately, has helped with that. There just aren't as many players in between. Also, more sophisticated traceability systems. We do have a traceability rule that unfortunately has been delayed by a year, but when that comes into effect, that will also help leapfrog from the recalling company to the consumer and make it faster.
That's the goal.
Yeah. And you can see here there are status reports. Class 1, your recall coordinator is going to want you to send those to them weekly for at least for probably a month or more. And then for class 2 and 3, just monthly. For all of them, you're still placed on FDA enforcement report. There are two submissions, one called Attachment B, mysteriously named Attachment B, and then the Reportable Food Registry, known as the RFR within the industry. And for class 1, you need to submit both of those. And there are time periods attached to both of those time deadlines. For class 2 and 3, you do not have to submit either of those. So some differences, but that's a quick comparison of the expectations. I want to move to the communications side of it. And I'm going to start with a FSMA regulation that in fact does say that any company that is governed by the preventive controls rule, whether it's animal food or human food, needs to comply with this part of the regulation here. One of them is you have to have a written recall plan, and inspectors are finally, I am hearing from companies, they are finally asking when they come in to do their audits or their inspections, they're asking to see recall plans. So they are checking. And within that plan, you have to identify the person and the steps that will be taken to notify your direct customers or consignees is how they're referred to. How you would notify the public if that's necessary, such as in a class 1 recall. How you're going to conduct those effectiveness checks with your customers. How you're going to find out that they actually received your recall notice and took the actions that you requested they take, and then how you're going to dispose of the food. What you'll notice here is that virtually all of this, except for perhaps B4, is a communication function. It's looking at how will the company communicate? How will it communicate with its customers? Who and how will they communicate with consumers?
Facetiously, facetiously speaking, of course, the best time to come up with a written recall plan and to practice or run a mock scenario with your recall plan is when you need it, right?
Well, I did actually have one company who had been delaying writing a recall plan for months and then finally got in a recall situation, and I was actually asked if they could write the plan while they executed the recall. And after I got over my amazement, I said, definitely not. No, you write it beforehand. It isn't going to do you any good if you don't write it beforehand.
Great point.